Hello and welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to Lotro plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, we added a border to our Soliloquy of Spirit tracker to show which player is selected, if it's someone who's already in the list. And we did some other small improvements on the way to releasing a version 1 of this kind of a patch onto the original Minstrel Buffs plugin. Today, we're going to go ahead and localize the plugin. We're pretty much at the end of the development cycle. This is the perfect time to localize it to make it easy for someone to make it work with French and German clients, as well as the English one we've been working on so far. If there's time, we'll do any other cleanup on our to-do list, and then release this as a patch. And that'll be very exciting, because then we'll be able to move on to something else next week. As always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. And in the meantime, let's get started. Hello to Little Redhead in chat. Okay. Let me see. First of all, in order to use Soliloquy of Spirit, your minstrel does have to be in a blue line, Water of Resolve. It's given when you spec into this. I wonder if there's a way to see that. Well, you ideally would see it listed here, just like skills earned, but oh well. It's there. And we are in blue line, so we do have Soliloquy of Spirit. We can go ahead and pop that out here. Soliloquy of Spirit, if you're not familiar, is a stackable heal over time effect, which can stack up to 3 times. We can see that happening over here on our player bar. And each time it comes out, it increases inner strength up to maximum tier 3, giving plus 3% physical and tactical mitigation to the target. Neat. So let's go ahead and open up our plugin manager. Oh, thanks, Moobot. Yes, that is a list of awesome plugins. Let's go ahead and open this up and load our Minstrel Buff plugin, and then we can see this in action. So when it first starts, Minstrel Buff's window starts in the upper left here. I'm going to drag that over here. And the Soliloquy window also starts there. I'm going to go ahead and just pop it in the middle of the screen so we can see it. Okay, so once again, if we go ahead and put those Soliloquy of Spirits, we can see our tracker is able to both give us a time countdown of the Soliloquy of Spirits and the 30-second inner strength. And if we select ourselves, this is what we did last time, we get a nice border showing that we are selected. Let's see, is anyone else within range? Knob, you're not in range. There we go. So if we... Oh, we can't heal Knob, apparently. He is unhealable. That's okay. We also have some colors in the background showing red if the inner strength is running low, or yellow if one or more of the Soliloquy of Spirits is missing, assuming inner strength isn't taking priority. For instance, we can see we're within 7-ish seconds of inner strength expiring. And so it went red. And we're going to lose an inner Soliloquy of Spirit here in a moment, and we'll see that yellow background happening. That sort of shows all the different variations on this theme. There we go. Now, we get out of sync like that because Soliloquy of Spirit has a 45-second cooldown, but inner strength only has a 30-second cooldown. So if you want to keep that tier 3 active and not start over from scratch tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, then you do need to pop by within 30 seconds to refresh that. Whereas the Soliloquy of Spirits, they run out after 45 seconds, making it very easy to still have 3 Soliloquy of Spirits on a target, but no inner strength at all. That'd be very sad. Aha! Random person ran past. Am I... Oh, I guess they were too far away. Oh well. Okay, so that's one of the downsides of being on the prancing pony, looking down on everyone. Oh, hello, Vermfondo. Let's see. Do you know if you can pull stats from the Skirmish Stats panel and use in an add-on? Just to double check, when I come in to Skirmish, which I have bound to Control-T, is it this panel that you're talking about? The Skirmish Stats panel, I would assume. And if so, I think the answer is no, but I've never looked at that. So before I commit to that, let's go ahead and pop open our API documentation. Just go ahead and expand everything and do a quick search for Skirmish. Now, not seeing anything Skirmish related is a bit of a downer. But that just means it's not available, probably, to Lua plugins from within Lord of the Rings Online client. That being said, actually, I'll just leave that here and minimize it for a moment. That being said, if you haven't tried it out, there is a standalone Java-based program called the Lotro Companion. I'm going to launch it here in the background. And it is able to pull information out of the Lotro client and present it to you in a third-party manner. When it launches, it goes on the wrong screen. Here we go. When it launches, it looks something like this. And so let me go ahead and just do a fresh import here. We can see, oh, actually, before I do that, if you have not launched your vault or your shared storage, you'll get that message waiting to retrieve. That means your client does not know what's in those things. So we're going to go ahead and get those open first. Excellent. And then we're going to have a Lotro Companion. Just go ahead and scan through and see what's going on here. And we can see one of the things it does is skirmish stats. So I haven't looked at that in the Lotro Companion client yet. So this is going to be an exploration together. While it goes ahead and extracts, I'm going to go ahead and take a drink. All right, it seems like I'm asking a lot of my computer right now. It is taking a few moments more than it usually does. Or this character is level 139, and I've been scanning level 50 characters recently and getting spoiled by how much less stuff there is to import. All right, so when we're done, we'll see result import finished, and then we can just close that window. And then we're on Evernight with Tideless here. So let's go ahead and come on in and come to skirmishes. And this is a lot of data. I don't know if this is what you were looking for. We can see I definitely have benefited from obsessively running skirmishes from Ill Omens. So pop into chat there from Fundal. Is this the kind of stuff that you were looking for? And if so, yay. Perhaps problem solved. I do like the playtime, and we can see Assault on the Ringless Lair. Thank you, Ill Omens. Almost 2 hours of time in there. Fort of Burnin, again, Ill Omens. Let's see, Siege of Gondomar. That's just fun. 2.5 hours Storm on Bethedris, which is different from duo mode, which is different from the solo mode, which I've spent 25 minutes. Awesome. That's a great deep dive into skirmishes, and if you, I think you might, yeah, you can click on the headers to sort, so we can see I've done the most mob kills in defense of the prancing pony. Got to defend that pony, otherwise I can't stand on it. And then after that, Battle of Deepway, awesome. Gotta love the dwarves. Okay. Can you export that in some way? Asks from Pondle. Excellent question. In general, I don't think Plugin Companion. Sorry. Yes, Plugin Companion. Unfortunately, there's also a Lotro Plugin Compendium, which is also awesome, which I also use a lot, and I will inevitably get the two of them confused. So the Java-based one is the Plugin Companion. The thing that manages your, the Lotro Companion, and the thing that manages your plugins is the Plugin Compendium. I am forever mixing those up. So in the Lotro Companion, all of this information is stored on your machine. Let's see if I can find that real fast. I'm going to muck about with my folder directory off screen just in case I show something I don't want to show. Okay, so in Windows at least, you probably have a users directory. Under that is your current user, and under that is .lotro companion. And in this, we can see most recent, looks like there was a backup the last time I did an update. Nice, thank you. And then within here, we can see characters, which one has been modified most recently. That would be this one. Awesome. And in here, we can see skirmish stats. Now, let's just open that in Sublime Text here for a moment. My editor of choice. And we can see all the information on the screen is represented here in an XML file. And so I think if you have any sort of programming savvy whatsoever, you should be able to slurp the contents of this XML into your language of choice and do whatever you want for it, including putting it into spreadsheet form. So that's sort of my first go-to answer when I want to get data out of Lotro Companion, is the data is already there on my file system. It's just loading that XML file and displaying them in a table. That being said, let's see, file, no, just seeing if any of these says export. I think they probably won't, but just in case. Settings about, yeah, no. I don't see an export option. So that'd be what I would do, is go straight to the source where this is coming from, just load it up, and when in doubt, you can take a look at this data. So for instance, Siege of Gondomar, where'd that go? Let's come on down to Siege of Gondomar. There we go. Oh, that's cool. It tracks on level and off level also. Fun. So Siege of Gondomar, duo on level. So we can see that 300 monster kills, the 42 lieutenant kills, the playtime presumably in seconds. Let's see. So that's 5,098 if we divide that by 60. Okay, yeah. Minus 60 for 1 hour, 24 minutes, 58 seconds. Yeah, that looks about right. Awesome. So that is a number in fractional seconds, apparently. That's very precise. And then it just goes down the row like that. So if you don't have a lot of experience dealing with XML, that's unfortunately not very helpful. I am curious what happens if I just throw that into a browser. I think it won't render very well. Oh, hey. But it does actually render it. So if nothing else, this is maybe a little bit more friendly of a way to see it. Just like Sublime Text, you can collapse areas you don't care about, or should be able to. Yeah, there we go. And the only thing in here is skirmish data. So if nothing else, you can use the multi-editability of a text editor to say, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and select all of that, or select all of these, and we'll just go ahead and accidentally close my window. Skirmish ID equals select all of those, and then go ahead and just delete that. And then we have headers. Like, you can do stuff like that just with manipulations. Gandalf says, greetings, I hope this day finds you well. Well, it does find me well, thank you very much. Vermpala says, no, that's awesome, that should let me get it at least. I should be able to just extract the ones called mission something, and the attempts completion of it. Ah, yeah, that's a good idea. Are there missions in here? Mission. There we go. Skirmish is completed. Yep. And the skirmish is completed. Yep, you can definitely do that. So if I were going to find all the name equals blah, and then just go ahead and get the next line to copy that to a new file, and then do some cleanup here. So I don't need the name there. I don't need that. And really, let's see. On the next line, I probably don't even need most of that. Okay. And there. So right, you can do some basic textual manipulation in the editor of your choice, or more complicated stuff programmatically, and then you just have your list. So that's definitely something you can do from this XML file without spending a lot of time on it. That was maybe a minute of manipulation of the text, right? And then we have a nice list. If you wanted something that was repeatable, that you didn't have to do that every single time, then yeah, maybe fire some basic scripting language to get the job done. Cool, okay, so that's digging into the XML files behind the Lotro Companion. I'm gonna go ahead and close that up. I'm curious about the further adventures of Bilbo Baggins. All right, 5 of each of them, nice. Okay, we'll just close that up here. All right. It says copy pasting that into Excel would probably be pretty easy to. Absolutely, and it's entirely possible Excel has some sort of XML loader. You know, I haven't even tried that. Let's see. If I were to go to data, get data from file, from not from JSON. JSON's lovely, but not today. And now Excel is thinking hard. Why are you thinking so hard? Yeah, I don't want that. Okay, so we're just going to go back in. I shouldn't have closed that window. And I know better than to think I'm done with it just because I'm done. Okay, so if I were to go ahead and in Excel, I'm going to make that a little less big, and get data from file, from XML, go ahead and paste in that path, and then grab the skirmish stats file. Let's just see what happens. I don't know what an XML import looks like into Excel. I'm not sure I've tried this before. Yeah, let's do that. And you do, just like any other import, have a chance to transform data, but that looks fine. Let's just do it. Throw everything into a column. Okay, well that was less complete than I was hoping for. So let's go ahead and do a new one from XML. Skirmish stats, and let's see. I don't know. Can we transform the data? See, this is where I'm going to stumble because I haven't tried to deal with XML in Excel before. Oh, that's fun. Okay. Well, cool. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Little Redhead. You brought some targets to me, Embry. Okay, so yes, it looks like Excel can at least load an XML file. It might take some tweaking to get it to just load everything into a column straight up, but you could definitely do something to replicate all of this. Awesome. Great question. Thank you. Okay, so that's sort of where my mind is going nowadays. If I can't do something from within the plugin Lua API, and if it's just data oriented, then chances are Lotro Companion has us covered, where it can go ahead and pull that information off your character, because that's what they're really seem obsessed with, is everything to do with your character, all the stats, all the quests, all the deeds, all of that. And so, yeah, when it's just a data thing like that, it's a very nice resource. Brimfunnel says, might have to fiddle a bit, but seems doable. Thanks a lot. You're very welcome. And thank you for leading me down that path. I had not tried that before. Okay. So that's the skirmish panel. And you know, it's funny. I had not realized how much information there was in this panel. And does this panel give you all of that? The time in there? I guess it does. Best time, play time. Yeah, okay. Maybe not quite the precision as they're able to grab from your character in memory, but still. I didn't realize all of that was in this panel. That's really cool. Thank you for reminding me that that exists. I think I've seen it like on my very first character when I had not done any skirmishes, so this was empty. I was like, oh, well, that's not helpful. And yet. Okay. Aha, there's people down there. Let's see, can I reach the fountain? I sure can. I can reach all three of those, because the Soliloquy of Spirit has a range of 25 meters. Plenty. I'm not entirely convinced that the Lord of the Rings online client takes elevation differences into account. Like, in theory, you should be able to do a three-dimensional Pythagoras' theorem, a squared plus b squared plus c squared, or the square root of all of that gives you a three-dimensional distance. But I feel like it's just giving me a horizontal distance, because that feels further away than 25 meters when you throw my extreme elevation in there. I don't know. I'll have to play with that someday. But if I hover over the little dot, I see 18 meters away. And I feel like it would say that if I was on the ground also. That being said, usually we don't have big elevation changes in, say, a dungeon where it really matters, so that's fine. Okay. So, just to demonstrate our highlighting thing, which, someone, who was it last time, gave some excellent feedback on how to finish that up. Well, you know what? I probably put it into the file. We're going to go ahead and go into Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins, and this is Minstrel Buffs. And we're going to go ahead and open first our to-do file, and also that border file, which was inspired by Exo, of course, Exogenesis, who has used that kind of thing, or will be using that kind of thing on his Auras plugin. Their Auras plugin. All right, so first thing on the to-do item, just as I mentioned before, we need to localize this thing. It's a bit text specific to pull things out of the chat log. Now, it might be possible for us to go find those strings ourselves. There's not that many, but the first thing is to do the localization. So what does that mean? Well, let's go ahead and pull open both the window and the row and find some examples. Okay, so this is the first one, possibly the only one. Exa says, no, entirely scrapped the idea of doing it due to me doing some weird things with collapsing fields that struggle with set stretch modes. That is too bad. I'm sorry it doesn't work for you. Because this plugin, well, this patch to the plugin is so basic, simple, non-complicated. It really worked very well, very nicely for me. That being said, the slightly more complicated version is to have independent left, right, top, bottom controls that you can position absolutely relative to the parent, all that stuff. But that's more complicated than the solution you provided, so I'm going to run with that. Okay, so this is text that we're expecting to see in the chat log, in the combat log. And this will be localized to various clients. French and German are the official clients. I think there's an unofficial Russian one still. And if there's an unofficial Russian one, that suggests that you could have other ones as well. So we want to support this plugin working at all under French and German, because this is never going to show up in your chat log in French and German. Not in the combat channel anyway. So we want to go ahead and localize this. And there's a couple ways to do that. We can just have a function that we pass this to, and it returns a string, either this string or a different one if a different one is available. We can have a table that we look up various entries in based on the current language. There's not necessarily one right way to do this. So I think I'm going to default to my kind of standard practice, but just be aware, like if you find yourself doing a different way that looks, that the end result is similar, that's totally fine. So let's go ahead and back out here to Qt plugins, and let's see, does the opaque quest tracker have any strings? I'm not sure it does. Let's see. Well, if it doesn't, then the 100 Deadly Decoy definitely does. So, how did we do this in the 100 Deadly Decoy, which also monitors combat chat to know when to show you when your 100 Decoy goes out? Little Redhead says, you said no strings, and I thought of Pinocchio. Absolutely. I don't know at what point I intuitively started thinking of the concept of a string as a sequence of characters in a computer program. Like, right? That is not necessarily a thing that a layperson will think of, and I use it unconsciously to mean that. So if I ever say the word string and you're confused what I mean, it is just a series of characters like this. This is a string. It's a series of characters within, in this case, double quotes that tells the computer a B followed by an E followed by an N and so forth. There's probably other words for that somewhere, but I use string. It's been a long time since I've tried to use anything else, I think. Okay, so what do we have here? We have a client language using the turbine.engine get language function. Let's take a look at that. All right, if we look at get language, it's going to return a number, which is the language the client is using, which isn't very helpful. But we do know that that is going to be of type turbine.language, which is going to be one of these values. So we can use this lookup here to save off friendlier, shorter values that we can use later on. EN for English, DE for German, FR for French, standard language code abbreviations. And we can go ahead and create a lookup table, lang. It can have subcategories. In this case, we had a status category and a decoy category and output messages and options. A lot of string stuff happening. And then within that, we can have an actual thing that needs to be translated. Loaded. And we can see the English was loaded the plugin, and in the Dutch it was geladen, and there is no French yet. So if a French person wants to donate some language translations, we can throw those in there. We could then just add that by doing fr equals ... And that's what we're talking about when we say localization, is ideally there's a single place where someone can come in, make a change, and then it just starts working on their language client. They don't have to go in and change code, they just have to change the language section. And with a section like this, ideally, it's accessible even to someone who's not a coder. If they just have a bilingual or trilingual capability, they can just come in and make the changes here without worrying about changing code, coming in and this function, we need to do something here. So you can just pass them this file, here's the strings file, and they can pass it back to you. No coding required. Okay, so this is the kind of thing that we're looking at, is a lookup table and a helper function, getString. You pass in the text, which is probably better called the lookup value. And if a translation for that exists, okay. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and just return the English version, so maybe something will work. This is especially good for options panels, where it won't be presented in their native language, but at least it will show up, right? So they'll be able to see it in English, maybe pop that into Google Translate, figure out what it's saying. Obviously, that will not work for combat log scraping, but better that this function returns something than just crashes. So let's go ahead and implement something similar for this. Now, the minstrel buffs might actually have some sort of strings. I don't know. Let's do a quick little search. The minstrel buffs plugin has some text. So let's search for that text and see if they already have a solution in place. So we're going to go ahead and, you know what, we'll go ahead and add the folder. And this is going to be minstrel buffs. And we're going to search recursively in there for only visible in combat. Okay. No, it's not localized at all. That is a little sad. We could actually add localization to the minstrel buffs plugin while we were at it, but one thing at a time. Okay. Well, I guess we can see, do we see any hint that there's language anywhere? We do not. Okay. So it is not uncommon to put your strings, your text to be translated in a file called strings. I think that's a great approach for what we're doing right here. So we're going to go ahead and yank off that window and use it as a template for what we're doing. Because once again, there's no point in rewriting all the code from scratch. If you have something that works and you like using it, go ahead and use as much of it as you can. You don't have to reinvent that wheel. That being said, let's go ahead and open up main, because we know we want to go ahead and import minstrelbuffs.minstrelbuffwindow.strings. And we'll put that early so that this getString function is available for anyone who wants to use it eventually. Maybe some other parts will get localized. Okay, and then we want to go ahead and have a strings.lua. And this is now being imported. Great. So, strings.lua, if we wanted to be using this plugin name, plugin version, plugin description, that all works. But Minstrel Buffs is its own plugin. We don't need to be overwriting however it announces itself to the world. In fact, we can see that here, Minstrel Buff view whatever by Melida. Where is that? Okay, Minstrel Buff, get help, Minstrel Buff version, and it uses also the get plugin version by Melida, shows the active ballads and anthems. Awesome. Now, if we wanted to, we could spit out something for the patch as well. We see that in some other places where the original author has written an output and then the patch person has also written an output. I'm of two minds. On the one hand, yay attribution, on the other hand, boo chat spam. So I often err on the lazy side and just don't bother. They can go into the README files if I've included one. Or just find it back on lotrointerface.com. Okay, so we have a strings file. I'm not going to bother with the plugin name, version, and description right now, but we do want this language stuff. So let's just double check for this get language call, because that's sort of the key for localization, and we can confirm, yes, indeed, there is no localization happening. So we can safely do it here. Okay, so we have the client language. This is a number, part of an enumeration, and we can add as much as we want here. So we're going to start with English, German, and French, the 3 official clients. But if someone wanted to add Russian in here, then they could just do the same thing. RU equals turbine.language.Russian. And again, any modifications would only involve adding stuff to this table at that point. You can then do RU equals, etc. So no code change required for that. Have I changed stuff? Okay, there we go. So, excellent. We won't bother with the RU right now, but if someone reaches out to us, we could definitely add that in. All right, and then we want a table. So that's going to be lang equals something. And we can go ahead and close that up right now. And we also want this function getString. Now, it might be useful to have a utilities library to have these kind of common functions to pass around from plugin to plugin. That's great. I've seen a lot of plugin authors do that, where they just have their utilities library and that they just include it. There's nothing wrong with that. In this case, it's a single function, and so including a whole library for this one function feels a little overkill-y, especially for a patch on another plugin. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to copy and paste this function over. The danger, of course, if there's a bug and I fix it over here, I then have to remember that it's over here and I should fix it there also. The more copies you make, the more likely one of them will slip through the cracks. But for a patch like this, I want to do as minimal a footprint as possible. So I only want to just add this one function or this one file and be done. I don't want to bring in a whole library. Okay, but we can review the function just to make sure it's doing what we think it is. So we're going to use client language. It's authoritative. And for testing purposes, that means we can always just set client language from a debug panel. Set it to French, set it to German. And this function is always just going to use whatever the current value is, and that value only gets set when we load the plugin. So if we change it after that, that's the new value from here on out. Okay. If they passed in a non-existent thing, return an empty string. So we're always going to get some kind of string. It might be empty. Cool. And then if the thing that they passed in, which again is meant to be a reference to this table here, status or decoy combat, something that has, it's meant to be even deeper. So lang.status.loaded or unloaded, the thing that we are trying to find a translation for. So we could even check to see if it's a table, but ideally that's not going to catch us more than once or twice. So we could add extra checks here if we wanted to. And then we're going to see, is there a translation for the client language? If so, use it. Otherwise, we're going to assume there's always an English translation because I'm writing this and that's the place I'm going to start, is with the English version. Really just hoisting the value that's in the code right now and putting it into this table. And if there's no value in code, then it doesn't need to be localized, so it's not going to be there. Okay, that function looks great. I'm going to go ahead and collapse that down. So we just need to remember that this is a category, and that's its own table. And then within that category are each of the elements. So element, thing to translate equals, and within here, we're going to have an entry for each of the languages. So English equals something. And then French and German as we get them. Okay, so that's what that looks like. And we are ready to go. Yeah, in my day, I just got distracted. In my day job, we've gone with the convention of just using L for language, or localization, probably, just because it's so much shorter, and it really just doesn't expand the code sideways nearly as much. And then you just call L with the thing, and then you get the output of that thing. So it looks a lot like, print L of translate me. And I like the look of that. Like it doesn't get in the way of me reading the code, but it's really subtle if you're not looking for it. Like it can easily fade into the background and you forget that it's even there. So in this case, I think we want to go ahead and keep the longer one so it's a lot more obvious if it's there or not. In my day job, I also have Visual Studio to tell me if I've forgotten to do the L thing, and I don't have that here. So I'm going to use the get string as a check on myself. Okay. You know, I'm just looking, and the Soliloquy of Spirit pattern doesn't seem to be in use. I'm wondering why it's there. I think I was using it to look at effects at some point, and right now it's throwing me off. It makes me think, oh, I should localize this, when in fact I don't think I should. I should just delete that. If we're not going to be using it, and we can do a recursive check, oh, it's only one, I use this one place, great. I'm going to go ahead and nix that. We've got what they are in text here, and I can recreate that pattern if I have to, but I think it's better not to translate things we don't have to. Okay, we've got a little minus sign to show that we can't select the target. That's fine. That doesn't need to be localized for right now. And we can see there's nothing that needs localization in the Soliloquy tracker row file. Great, I'm going to close that. Okay, I think we're done with the old strings file. We're going to go ahead and close that. Cool. So, in the window, which is where we're doing the string stuff, let's take a look. Oh, and in the back of my head, I know there's something in the option window, so I'm going to open that up to remind myself. Okay, so we can see the drag bar itself has a label. Now, it doesn't have a very long label because the bar is just not very wide. So we can see Soliloquy, we could probably get Soliloquy of Spirit in there if we tried. Let's just, out of curiosity, Soliloquy of Spirit. But my guess is it's actually going to be too long. Oops. Oh, it's not. It uses a pretty small font. That's great. Also, I had forgotten that my unlock move stuff around was active. That made it funny. Okay, so we have Soliloquy of Spirit. That's actually not too long, although we can't be like tracker, right? Which is the whole point of this. So instead, if we were to say Soliloquy tracker, would that be too long? Let's find out. Soliloquy tracker. That's just not too bad. We can see that fits in here nicely. Obviously, on a 4K screen, that's going to be really tiny, but that's a larger ecosystem problem. Okay. We could also do like an SOS tracker, but I think Soliloquy is important in this case because SOS has other meanings as well. Okay, so Soliloquy tracker. Now we need to go ahead and hoist that out. So the category is Windows. Maybe. Ah, man, naming things is hard. We're just going to call it window and then drag bar title. Okay, and then we have the English version is this. We can just copy paste that in there and we're good. So now we have get string, and we just need to have that be lang dot window dot drag bar title. So that's getting a little long. I'm going to go ahead and boot the parameters to the next line. If I'm feeling really generous, I'll put each parameter on its own line at this point to make it really obvious that there's two parameters going on. At that point, the line's gotten too complicated for a single line. And here we can see one of the strengths and weaknesses of this approach, because we could have just done, we'll be even shorter and say L, oh, I should spell soliloquy right. Soliloquy tracker. Right, we could have a function that takes in this string, and we could actually have a table that is, we'll call it lang2, and we could just have this key equals a table that has English equals the same thing, but also German and French. Oh man, Dutch client would be so cool. So we could do this, and here the function L of this is just going to iterate through, and for each, here, we'll do function get string to text. And that one's pretty easy. If lang2 text is not equal to nil, if it is equal to nil, then we want to go ahead and return an empty string. So now we know there's an entry in lang2. So, let me pause on that. Oh, cool. There's someone in chat. Hello, Lori. It would be great to have a plugin along Twitch playlist to find all this awesome learning resources in one place. Good news, there actually is such a playlist, but the design of Twitch boggles my mind, and I'm not exactly sure how to link to that playlist. But there is a plugin along playlist, and I update it after each one of these streams. So I'm going to pause for a moment and see if I can grab that. You can also find these on YouTube, on the Life Beyond the Shire YouTube channel, and each of those has a link in the comments to the next one, so you can easily skip around, and also there's a playlist there as well. That being said, if I come into my to-do list, I know that there is a link to, okay, collections, excellent. Where am I? And then how do I share this? What's the link to this collection? Share, awesome. Does it actually work? Maybe. I probably shouldn't be playing stuff on Twitch while I'm streaming though. Okay, great. So that is the current plugin along collection on Twitch. And then of course there's a companion one there for YouTube as well. Cool, great question, thank you. On the one hand, I'm super excited that people are finding this interesting to watch, and I'm happy to have it both here and on YouTube. On the other hand, I get kind of distracted and go off on tangents and go down false leads and do things that end up not mattering. And so hopefully that's educational, but if it's not, that's totally on me. Like, this is not necessarily the best structured class out there. Anyhow, so yes, if we had, in fact, let's go ahead and call that function L. We have this text. We know there's an entry in this table. Awesome. We can do the same thing that we were doing before, which is if lang2 text, client language does not equal nil, then return it. Otherwise, return the English version, right? And so, I am of two minds. I love the look of this, right? I love that you know exactly what the English text is, which is important for me as a developer. I know what that text is going to be. So let me actually copy this out. What would this look like? Okay, so of the two of these, one of these is a lot more evident what's going to be put into that title bar. Oh, Soliloquy Tracker, or the German or French equivalents. Awesome. And in this one, conceptually, you know what it is. Oh, it's the title of the drag bar. I don't know what that is without going to look, but I know conceptually what should be there. Oh yes, Lotro had to point it out. For the first 4 or so plugging along streams, I had accompanying blog posts. That was really sort of the foundation, get going. What's a plugin? How do we do this? And so there are accompanying blog posts over in Light Beyond the Shire that you can use. If you're really new to plugin development and want to just start from the basics, how do I make a window? How do I put something out to chat? What's a plugin? All that sort of thing. Okay, so that's what I think of the main strength of the inline version here is you know what's going to happen. And actually it's very similar to the way Visual Studio, for instance, does its language resource translations. So if you're coming from that world, that's going to feel familiar. But it's also very fragile. This is always going to keep working. As long as the entry over in strings, drag-bar title, as long as that doesn't change, you're going to get a meaningful result. And you can change the text here without a problem. And that makes it very safe to pass this off to someone. They can localize it. It comes back. Everything's good. As soon as you change this at all, oh, I think this should have an exclamation point. You have to remember to change it in the other place. Otherwise, it just won't work. Oh, not that one. This one. This lookup here has to exactly match the text over here. And any changes, if you forget to replicate that across, it's 2 a.m., you're just banging out a feature, oh, that's awesome, and you've changed one of these things because I'm excited, you should be excited too, and you forget to do it in your language file, now you have broken that localization. And so this is extremely fragile, but extremely easy to tell what should be happening. Whereas this, it does not matter. If you change the text over here, as long as the name of that category doesn't change, the actual text, even in English, can change all you want. So we can add 1, 2, maybe even 3 exclamation points to this title, and it will not ever break the code. So I really like that stability. I like that single place to edit things. But it means if you're looking at this and be like, what is that? What is the value? Unless you do like a little comment that says Soliloquy Tracker or whatever, and which can also get out of sync, then you kind of have to say, oh, I kind of care what that value is. Okay, let's come in here and find it. Oh, okay, that's what it is. Because if you're reverse engineering, if you have the UI, it's like, oh, I have this thing called Soliloquy Tracker. Where is this in the code? Then now you have to find it in the language, and then you have to find this key, and now you have to find where the key is used. So it makes backtracking and reverse engineering, I see something on the screen, where is it in code, a little bit harder. But for that, the second strength of this system is you can have 2 things that end up today having the same output. Options title, and it also says Soliloquy Tracker, and then later you can be like, oh, I have plenty of room, Soliloquy of Spirit Tracker, and that's totally fine. There were 2 conceptual things that just happen to share the same value, and you just can't do that in this lookup table. Not without, again, having like 2 levels, like window.soliloquy tracker. So I think this is not as good as this for what I'm trying to do, but they're both available. So play around, try them out, and yes, Monk Dog, even 3 exclamation points if you're feeling very excited. I know the standard rule is 1 or none, but sometimes 3. 3 is a sometimes exclamation. All right, I gotta switch out my water here. There we go. Okay, so those are kind of the 2 standard ways of doing language strings that I've seen so far for plugins. A table with possible nesting of structure. You could have them all at the same level, but I find this is very good for organizing. And within that, you have your different language strings, or the string itself is the key for the table, and within that subtable, you just have the translations straight up. As I've said, that's not my preferred, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. For something as simple as this plugin, it could work just fine, though. And if you're just trying to do something real fast right before you ship, sure. You can always switch from one to the other with a little bit of effort. There's nothing that locks you into one or the other. All right, so we have a drag bar title. Awesome. I guess we don't need that options title yet. So how am I doing this? Well, I'm actually just searching for a double quote, which is how I write strings in Lua. I guess it's possible that you can do single quote strings. I'm not convinced of that. So double quote is the standard way of doing strings. And so I'm just searching, did I do double quotes? Because that's could be okay, like we saw with that hyphen, which was just a special way of showing I can't target this character. And we could localize that too. Okay, so we have chat. So we're going to have a second section called chat. And we're going to name it Soliloquy of Spirit, I guess. Soliloquy of Spirit equals, and then we have the English. Actually, it's not just Soliloquy of Spirit, it's the pattern. And that's very important. It's the pattern that we're using to find that a Soliloquy of Spirit has been done on someone. Excellent. And again, that uses a dot star to absorb the soliloquy of my spirit if you're in redline. And that's a really important thing to remember is that your healing skills change names if you, sorry, not redline, if you are in dissonance stance. So we can see here, this is soliloquy of my spirit, chord of my salvation, bolster my courage. So if you're doing anything regarding chat messages, remember that in dissonant stance, your minstrel skill names change names. Which caught me out the first time. It's like, why isn't this working? It was working yesterday. I had changed stances because I was running around in Yule Festival and I needed to hit some trees. Okay, and then the second thing we do is capture the target. Soliloquy of Spirit on Stain, let's say. And then we use a capture group, the parentheses, to get that back as the result of the string match. We'll get a tuple of capture groups as a result. And that's good. So we can go ahead and hoist that out. And same thing, we can do get string, and this is lang.chat.soliloquy of spirit pattern, which is a little wordy, but it's fine. It's the only thing that's going to be on this line, so it doesn't make it too wide for my taste. It's close, actually. What is that? Oh, 84 over. Well, it's past the magic 80. That's okay. Cool. So that is localized. Let's go ahead and search. Oh, that's the last double quote. Awesome. Soliloquy of Spirit was actually really simple. Once we stopped caring about the effect list and trying to find specific effects in that list, it really just became a question of on whom did the soliloquy get applied? And that was it. Okay, so of all of that, that's the localization. But I did remember we added a thing to the options window. In here, use soliloquy tracker. So we want to go ahead and make sure we find that. There we go. And same thing in here. We want to hoist that out. We can actually make a third table. We're just going nuts with our tables. Options. This is in preparation for someday, maybe more parts of this will get localized. We can support that anyway. And so everything in the options window, I would love to just see tucked into the options section of the Lang table. All right, and we're going to go ahead and call this use. It's so wait. I got to get better at spelling that. That was one of my secret goals of doing a Soliloquy Spirit tracker was I'm going to learn how to spell soliloquy quickly, and it hasn't come. It's a struggle. Okay, so the English use Soliloquy tracker. Great. And we can go ahead and replace that with get string, and that's lang.window. lang.options. I'm just going to copy paste that. Use soliloquy tracker. Great. Now, there are plenty more quotes in here, but that's the one we care about. Use soliloquy tracker. Debug options are not going to be on, and they're only really for a developer, so they do not need to be localized. Only end user-facing strings. Just concern yourself with those to start with. And then if you eventually have a large plugin with developers from all over the world, then sure, yeah, go ahead and localize that too. But don't prematurely localize things that only you are going to see. Okay, so that is a Lang table with categories and specific strings to translate. That is a helper function that will pick out the correct language, or if it's not there, fall back to English. And then we're done. That is the strings file. We went ahead and updated Soliloquy Tracker window and option window, and we removed some unneeded strings from the Soliloquy Tracker row that were kind of sending us down a false path. Like, you should do this. Well, no, you should not. Okay, now, of course, the final test is, does this work? So let's go ahead and unload that. And first of all, load. And we see there were no loading errors. So at least the syntax was good. Hooray for copy pasting from another project. And then we can double check that we do see use Soliloquy Tracker. We see Soliloquy Tracker, and we can see that the combat log still works. Now, how do we know for sure that this is working? Well, let's break it. Let's add those 1, 2, even 3 exclamation points. Let's go ahead and say use Soliloquy Tracker frowny face, and benefit with Soliloquy Spirit. We'll pause on that for a moment. Okay, so we've loaded back in. We can see Soliloquy Tracker 3 exclamation points. Excellent. Localization's good there. Options, use Soliloquy Tracker frowny face. Perfect. And we can see the actual tracking itself is still good. So we're going to go ahead and revert those two and benefited me with Soliloquy Tracker. Obviously that is the wrong string. So we can see it's no longer working. Perfect. Well, broken, but broken in just the way we thought it would be. Cool. So we'll go ahead and fix that string, come back in, and bam, we're back. And we can even pop it onto some of our hobbits. There's Turquoise there. There is Morgan Neat, and of course, Munstein. And we can use the clicking to select on anything that we could find a valid player object for in our party. And otherwise, even if we don't have that, if we click on them, that border can still show up. Delightful. Okay. And of course, one of the things we implemented was this little X button to get rid of them until the next time we start combat. Legend says, hey, how did you get up there? Well, the prancing pony is delightful, and it is reachable if you are clever. No, there's actually a cliff over there that's just close enough. It does take practice, though. Sometimes I will run and jump off that cliff and just smack into the side of the building. It's very sad. Okay, so we have localized this plugin, which is great. Make sure to localize the chat, text, or effect names. Done. Let's go ahead and mark that done. And let's go ahead and pull up our source control tool. In this case, this is the program Fork, and it's using a Git repository to take snapshots of the changes in code. Okay, so localized Soliloquy of Spirit changes. Excellent. So we have that. We do need that strings import. We don't need the dump function. That's just for debug purposes. Same thing with the show options, but we do want to use this localization in the options window. We want to go ahead and remove those 2 strings that are unused. And in the window, we want to go ahead and do this localization. Great. And this localization. Stage. Awesome. And then finally, the strings file itself, we want to go ahead and take a snapshot of that. So these are all the little changes that we did to localize the plugin. That was 3 strings, and we are still changing 6 files to do it. So bigger plugins, bigger developments can get away from you. You don't have to do this all at the end, but the earlier you do your localization, the more you risk having to change and rechange those strings. And having them all in line, like we saw, is very helpful for being like, okay, I'm just going to change it here. I'm going to see it. It's great. I know what's supposed to happen. Cool. Having them hoisted out to a localization table makes it just a little bit harder to do that development without just having an extra window. Now, if you have plenty of real estate on your screens, I have 2 monitors, and so I can have essentially 4 columns of text files that are all very easy to read. But if you're only working on a single monitor, maybe consider putting off hoisting those strings out until you really are sure you're done changing all those strings. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take that snapshot, localize SOS changes, bam. And I think that was a useful one. We're going to go ahead and push that out to the cloud. Perfect. Okay, so anything else? We could go ahead and ship this right now, but I feel like we have a little extra time before the end of the stream. So let's maybe look at a few other things that we could clean up before shipping this out. First thing, why is Soliloquy Tracker window a window if it contains a window? That's a very excellent question. First of all, where is Soliloquy Tracker window used? Probably in main. Let's go ahead and find that. We can see we have a Soliloquy window equals that. And we are passing the settings. Great. And that's all. We just have that. But calling that constructor does everything else. And we can see we declared that Soliloquy Tracker window should be considered a type turbine UI window. But the puzzling thing is I then went ahead and said, we have a window. I don't know why I did that. But the real question is, where do I use that, and is it a problem? So let's go ahead and see. We pass a reference to ourselves to the drag bar. We use ourselves as the parent. We get the size of the self.window. We set the visibility. I really feel like this can be hoisted out. So we already are doing the turbine.ui.window. Awesome. So let's see. Are we doing set size anywhere else in this? We are not. So we're going to go ahead and say self set size. Same thing with set position. I'm guessing no. So we're going to go ahead and nix the self window. And as a reminder, I'm willing to be this casual about making these changes because we just took a snapshot. So I can roll this back at any time if I say, oh, that was a mistake. I can roll this back, and we're no worse off for trying it out. So once again, I highly recommend a source control system, even if you're not backing things up remotely, though you could be. It at least gives you the freedom to try things out. And if I don't like it, I can just discard those changes, go back to how it was nice and working just a few minutes ago. Okay, set mouse visible. We actually already have one of those, but if we go ahead and only have one of them, that'll work. Set once key events. Okay, let's go ahead and set that. And we can go ahead and say self.keydown equals that. That lets us monitor for the F12 and the control backslash and those kinds of things. Okay, self.window. We're going to go ahead and pass self to the drag bar. List box set parent, again, it's just going to be self. And self get size. Lotro's Market is your one-stop shop for current and previous expansions. Well, goodness, let's go ahead and throw a Gundabad in there. Fate of Gundabad is available. And apparently they just abbreviate to Gundabad. Okay, I want to take one last look. I assume they've stopped with the Yule sales, but I really want to test Carry-All. So I'm gonna see if it's available. No. Okay. Okay, and then here we do update size. We're getting the size of that window. It's just going to be self, and then self.window set with, yeah, we'll get rid of that. Self.window is visible, set visible, get position, set visible. All of this seems reasonable. And that suggests that maybe that would work. Let's go ahead and unload and reload and see if we broke things. Okay, we can see that we have a window. We have a drag bar that still works. I can click on this. I'm going to go ahead and have a party member. I can click on each of those. And my mouse goes through there. Awesome. I think it's really interesting that if you have queued up a skill, it remembers who you had targeted. So if I queue up a second one of those and then click on Monstain, the queued up version still goes to Tidlos, who I had previously clicked. And that's caught me up sometimes when I'm trying to lay these on people rapid fire, is I'll accidentally queue it up on the same one twice instead of waiting before I've clicked on that other one. Like that would do, I think. Yeah, there we go. So click Soliloquy, quick Soliloquy, that's fine. But Soliloquy and then changing target, just not going to work, and that catches me up sometimes. Okay. Well, we have a pretty good demonstration that this is working fine. Oh, I haven't tried the X button. Let's go ahead and kill that. Great. Excellent. Note to get from Rose someday. Yeah, maybe I should do that. No, hold on, stay on target. Okay, so that was changing. So we can go back to our to-do file. Why is Soliloquy Tracker window a window if it contains a window? That was a very good question. And at the time, I was in the middle of some other change. And that's really part of my mental process is, let's not get derailed. Let's just put that in the to-do file as a, let's do this later. Because right now I'm doing this other thing, and if I get derailed, I might never come back to it. So this went into the to-do file, and now we've come back to it. Excellent. As long as you eventually come back to it, it's fine. Or eventually decide, no, that's not a problem. It wasn't technically a problem. Everything still worked. It was just a weird thing. And it seemed like it would cause me problems 6 months from now if I go to fix a bug. And I look at that and say, why did I do that? That had to be intentional, right? I wouldn't just do that. But what's it doing? And I would just drive myself crazy for 30 minutes looking at it until I finally decided, no, that's just silly. That shouldn't be there. And then I would fix it then. So I'm glad we got a chance to do it now. Okay, so to-do file. Fixed window containing a window. And we can even say Soliloquy of Spirit. Okay, so we can go back in. Those two are fine. This is the one that we want. And we can even do a little bit of a comparison, a pre and post comparison, just to convince ourselves that we haven't changed anything we didn't meant to. I've launched an external file comparison utility called Beyond Compare. It's my personal preference for looking at things beyond just what the fork is doing right here. It's doing, what's that called? It was doing a split diff, but I'm really used to a side-by-side diff. It's easier for me to line up what has changed and what hasn't. And Beyond Compare, I find, does a really nice side-by-side diff. Though I wish I had a dark mode. Maybe it does. I'll have to look into that. Okay, so we can see set mouse visible, still there. The constructor, don't need anymore. And then we have size, position, mouse, key down, self. So it's very easy to see all we've done was lost the dot window. Dot window, dot window, dot window. And we're seeing that show up in a light red color against a darker red background, or possibly vice versa, which it maybe is not the most color-friendly way to view it, but I am quite used to it at this point. Okay, window, window, window. That's the only change that I see. In fact, you can be kind of tricky and come in and say, unimportant text is dot window. And then you can say, oh, okay, the only changes that weren't a dot window are this constructor that we wanted to kill and a duplicate set mouse visible. Lovely. That really convinces me that I haven't accidentally broken anything. And side by side, I find it way easier to tell that each one of these lines lines up. If I do a side by side here, you can do it, but everything's gotten a little squished because you also have all of this source control happening on the left side of the screen. So you can maximize it to try to do better, but sometimes I just kick it out to an external program that's really good at doing comparisons, because that's all it does. Awesome. All right, so I've convinced myself everything in here is supposed to be there and is not a mistake. So we can go ahead and take a snapshot. Commit that change. Excellent. Anything else we can do real fast? So one of the things we were talking about on a previous stream was that plugins that have to look at chat take a certain amount of processing power to do their thing. For instance, let's go ahead and add a, what do you mean I can't add a tab? Do I have too many tabs? there's actually a limit on how many chat tabs you can have, and it throws me for a bit of a loop when it happens. All right, loot. Cool, I had a tab for loot. I don't need that anymore. I'm going to go ahead and delete that tab. And we'll go ahead and create a new tab. And we'll call this one Combat. Cool. And we're actually only going to add the combat. Where is it? Combat player. There we go. So we can see in this that Soliloquy of Spirit, or Tideless apply to benefit with Soliloquy of Spirit on Tideless. Great. That's what we're parsing. But in order to find that one, we have to look at every one of these messages coming in. So if I also have a Soliloquy of Spirit over there, and a Soliloquy of Spirit over here, and a Soliloquy of Spirit over here, and another one over here, and just start stacking these things up, we can see these messages start to come in multiple times a second. And the more of these you have up, and the more other things that you're doing, the more messages that your plugin is going to be told, hey, do you care about this? 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 Which takes a certain amount of time to say, no, I don't. And so one of the things we saw was that by stopping our listening to chat altogether when use Soliloquy Tracker is off, we can avoid all of that processing time. But sometimes I forget that thing's running, right? The whole point is it just runs in the background and it does its thing. So I thought it would be neat to see if we can tell, does the player have Soliloquy of Spirit trained? Because they will if they are in wrong key. They will if they are a Watcher of Resolve, and they won't if they're either of the other two trees. And so if we can just say, A, you either have it or you don't right now, and B, know when they change stances, or I should say lines, then we can just know that we do not need to pay attention to chat at all, even if this section of the plugin is enabled, and save all of this processing. So that seems really appealing to me. I wasn't sure if we could tell whether when we switched from, say, a blue line to a red line, but in chat, Exo was saying last time that Aura's is able to do that in main.lua. And I love looking at other plugins for inspiration, so I'm going to open up the Lotro Plugin Compendium and go ahead and add Auras. And we can see it's downloaded and extracted that, and we're good to go. So, Auras probably doesn't work for minstrels. Nope, it does not. Oh, it might not be working. Wait, attempt to index field class. That sounds like a dependencies problem. Strange. Okay, we're going to go ahead and look at what Auras does, though. So we're going to come into plugins, Exo plugins, go Exo. And in Auras, we have a main.lua. Exo says, doesn't open on Minstrel. But Minstrels are Bestrels. Oh, well. Okay, so we actually see there's a main over here. When you have two files of the same name open in the same window, Sublime differentiates them with a path. Ugh. Oh, Exo says they think the traitline thing is actually in utils. Awesome. Well, we can see that Exo plugins.auras.utils is imported from main. Excellent. Cool. And we can see useful things in here. The S pairs helper, the add callback, the remove callback. You'll see these all over Lotro plugins as a way of allowing multiple things in your apartment to care about the same event that you are firing. Where if it's a single one, it just call this. If it's multiples, they're stuck into a table and you iterate through each one and call them. Excellent. Configure font, neat. Seconds to minutes, nice. Well, actually, I'm curious. What do you do with that? Cool. String time. Fun. Okay. Get midpoint, sort of effects. I enjoy looking through other people's utility files to see what things did they care enough about to stick into that utilities file, or what things are applicable to this plugin specifically. Load data, save data, excellent. Oh, when I see these load data and save data, are these hoisted out of the Vindhar? Is it? Oh, what is it? Vindar patch. Are these hoisted out of the Vindar patch? If not, have you seen that? And does it affect, or does its lack of it affect you, Exo? Because that is a thing that I talked about when we were talking about localization. Was this is very handy for covering issues between switching from English to French to German clients. Okay, so load, save, debug, excellent. Dump, there's that dump file function again, excellent. Copy table, get roll, oh, okay. It's a mildly tweaked version of primes loading. Cool, okay. All right, get roll. I'm curious. Oh no, is there no minstrel? Oh, there is minstrel, neat. Okay, so if player class is that, you go through the skill list, and then you check. Obviously, if you have Soliloquy of Spirit, then oh, interesting. So you just have 1, 2, 3 being like left, middle, and right. Neat. Okay, so where are we calling get roll? Let's find out. Exo says, oh, you wanted to listen to trait swapping. My bad, that is main. No worries, actually. I think this is really nice also. This is a, I don't know if you borrowed this from somewhere else, but this is a nice authoritative way of saying, how do I know which of my traits I'm in? Oh, these are things that are specific to one of those three. And of course, Brawler only having 2 of them just throws a wrench into everyone's assumptions that everyone has 3 possible traits. It's great. Okay, so if we go ahead and search for trait, all right, turbine.chat.advancement, chat type.advancement, string find messages, you have acquired the class specialization bonus trait. Neat. That sure sounds like a possibility. Let's try it out. Let's go ahead and hang on. Let's go ahead and change combat. We no longer care about that. Let's only care about advancement. And we'll even rename it advancement. There we go. And let's go ahead and change trait. So many things. I'm going to make this bigger so we can see more of it. Excellent. And we can see you have acquired the class specialization trait, the Warrior Skald. Fantastic. Now, downside is we are replacing one chat monitoring for another. In order to not monitor all of the combat log, we now have to monitor all of the advancement log. But the good news is advancement happens way less frequently in standard gameplay than combat. Oh, nice. And Exo mentions they do a 3-second wait after they receive the message, since it takes a moment to swap the line, as we saw. Like that was a good couple of seconds before it went. We add a callback, the updater, tick, reload handler. That's delightful. I'm curious where that is 3 seconds, but I'm going to pause on looking for that. All right, so you do a message to find you've acquired class specialization bonus trait, and then as long as that was not nil, then we know the thing has happened. Sweet. Actually, because this is minstrel only, I can just check for those specializations, and if it's not the good one, the healing one, let me switch back to it. If it's not the Watcher of Resolve, then game over, right? I don't have all the needs that Aras does, so I can just say, oh, it's the Watcher of Resolve, great, you're in. It's not the Watcher of Resolve, you are out. So this is actually looking very delightful. Okay, you say it's the one above. Reload handler, awesome. So if reset time is that, get that. Player roll equals get road, reload, and remove the callback. And if it is nil, then we do game time +3. That's delightful. Exo says, certainly you don't need to wait for because of that. Yeah, so because this is such a simple plugin compared to some of the more complicated ones like Aura's, my needs are very simple. So I'm going to steal wholeheartedly this technique here. Now, so yes, we are going to stop listening to combat all of the time, but we have to listen to advancement all the time in exchange. I think that's a fair exchange. We just don't get that much advancement. We can see, like, nothing's happening. And yeah, your quest completion doesn't go into there. I think leveling up happens. I'm not sure what else goes in there. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to incorporate that. We're going to go ahead and put the thing we're borrowing from over here on the right. And over on the left, actually, we'll stick that utils there for a moment also, because we already have names of things, just in case. XP says XP, experience and level up, I believe. Well, that's interesting. But in a standard combat, you're probably going to see a lot more combat messages of you doing things than the XP from completing the combat. So that's a trade-off that I think is well worth it. But the trickiness is, how are we going to do that? So chat received, we have a chat received function, and we have a function called enable disable chat monitoring. And the problem is right now it's all or nothing. We're either setting the chat received function to sorry, I'm going to distract my chat. Exo says, if you're at a point where you legitimately care to track SOS, you're probably capped on experience. Yeah, I could see that. You know, I'm focused so much on Treebeard, where you know I started this because I was capped, and we were running Storvagun tier 2, whatever, and I was carrying there, and so that is an accurate assessment. That being said, if you're level 30 and running Great Barrows, this might still be a good thing to pop on the tank. So, but I still think it's a good trade-off, even if you are still getting experience. All right, so this is all or nothing, right? We're doing a chat received if we're enabled. Otherwise, we're doing chat received equals nil. So we can complicate this a little bit. So we that thing's always got to be something, but we could have a function that cares about player combat. Sorry, I'm hemming and hawing because I'm not sure how I want to handle this. Ultimately, I want a function, Soliloquy tracker window. What did we even call this? Specialization. Special check for special. I didn't hit the right copy button. Check for specialization changed. Center args, and so that always needs to happen. It's this player combat part that doesn't. So I'm actually going to split this into two. Soliloquy tracker, check for Soliloquy of Spirit, sender args. Now, I actually probably don't need the sender. I never use it. So, and for args, well, chat type and message. I like that. Okay, so I'm going to nix the sender for now. Not necessary. We could always add it back in if it ever becomes so. It won't. And then we can go ahead and just call self check for soliloquy of misspelled spirit. That's not great. Spirit. There we go. Now I'm doubting myself. Okay, and that just lets us move this up, and we're one step closer, right? Because the other thing we want to do is self-check for specialization changed. Okay, what's this going to be? Well, this is the code that we're going to borrow, steal wholeheartedly from EXO. Okay, specialization checking inspired by EXO. And proper attribution time. EXO's auras plugin. And then here, we're going to look for that message, right? But of course, we do want to remember that we've recently localized things. And so we're going to go ahead and localize this message as well. Now, we already have a chat function section, so that's great. Specialization changed equals, and the English version of that equals this. Now, this is one of those cases where, because it's just getting spit out into chat, this is actually really easy for us to follow up on and just do the localizations ourselves. Find that what looks like that in the French, in the German, and spit them out here. That's very doable. I probably won't do it on stream because changing the language requires completely exiting and coming back in, and that takes enough seconds that I don't want to bother if I have something else to work on instead. Okay, so you have acquired the class specialization bonus trait, blah. Cool, okay. Well, let's come on back here, and we can say local, what did we call this before? Pattern. Okay, pattern equals get string, and that's lang.chat.copy paste. Don't type it if you can copy paste it. All right, so we're going to get that specialization. Okay, just checking that I didn't typo that too. And then message equals string find args.message, and then we're finding the pattern. And side effect, that line is much shorter and easier for me to read in one go and convince myself that it looks correct. Okay, so we have a pattern, we have the message, and in this case, message is probably correct, but I think I might want to call that result, or match result, just to make it a little bit more clear what it is in my head. And then if match result does not equal nil, then do something. And then if we're blue line, then enable combat log checking. If we're not, then disable combat log checking. So that's what I want to do. This is to show, I'm not exactly sure how I'm doing it yet. So that's okay. The syntax highlighting is nicely calling out that that is no good. Okay. So we have the English, the Watcher of Resolve. In fact, we can get the specialization, right? That's the Watcher of Resolve we saw before. That was the Warrior Skald. These are the names that we're looking for. So we can use a matching group to grab that. So we can go ahead and say, yes, there's a space there. And then I want to capture, sorry, I should have said a capture group. I want to capture whatever else is there. And then there's a period at the end of it. Yeah. I'll have to do some testing to convince myself that the greediness of this dot star is not going to also take the dot and then result in no match, but I believe it's going to be fine. Okay, so you've acquired the class specialization bonus trait, blah. And then we can go ahead and say new specialization. And that's what we're getting back from that is the one capture group that we've specialized. So if, in fact, if new specialization equals get string lang dot, well, what are we looking for? It's kind of chat, but it's really more of like a class, right? But it's happening in chat, so I think we're going to put it here. So what are we looking for? A Watcher of Resolve. And then we're going to go ahead and remember to put semicolons at the end of our table definitions, but more importantly, we're going to go ahead and get this name here, the Watcher of Resolve, which should match what's up here. All right, so we have the Watcher of Resolve here. And we have lang.chat.watcher of resolve. So if that equals that, then else end. Okay, so now we have the way to capture this. All right, so, but how are we going to enable and disable that log checking? We probably need a new variable to track that, right? Well, first of all, we are handling whether or not chat received works at all. We can't do that anymore because we always have to be monitoring chat to look, well, if the thing's off, then we don't. So if used, okay, is that the only thing we're doing that now? All right, setting is Soliloquy window is changed, used equals not used, okay. And then we go ahead and enable disable. Okay, so this is enable or disable just based off of that options checkbox. Turning it off. Oh, hello, Avri. You have a complicated question related to Lotro add-ons. Probably too lengthy to derail you with. How can you best put it there? Well, if you feel comfortable typing it, you can always type it into the chat. And if I can't answer it, I'll just go ahead and stick it into the notes for next week, and we can just pick it up from there. You can also email me. If you don't want to risk losing it to your web browser, you can email me at, where is it? There we go, lotrodeedtracker@gmail.com. That's also fine, just email it to me. And again, we can look at it, but Exo says, I need to sort out my connection. Buffering every 10 seconds makes it tough to follow. Oh, so other thing that you can do, interesting. I'm being told that might not be just you, and yet I seem fine. Let's see, let me minimize this a sec and see if reducing the struggle here on my computer. Well, OBS is reporting some dropped frames. That's disappointing. But it's dropping the frames even if I pause the recording. So it doesn't seem to be the recording part of it. Well, that is wild. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. So a thing that I have done before in Twitch, and I'm gonna really blow this thing's mind because I'm gonna curse here. Okay, pause. Don't do that. Excellent. So under settings, under advanced, there is a low latency setting. And I've found that if I toggle that off, then generally I'm about 5 to 10 seconds more behind in time than I would be. And I've compared this because Little Redhead will be, further ahead in time, but it really sorts out some stuttering issues that my computer sometimes has. So if you even are able to hear that, give it a try. Okay, well, that being said, and I am sorry that apparently I might be dropping frames. If you are having trouble, you can always catch it on the replay, or better yet, on YouTube, where we'll upload the local recording instead of whatever managed to get to Twitch. Okay. Avri, in the meantime, says, don't feel pressured to answer here. I can email. Just tell me to do that instead if you want. I used to heal on Classic WoW, and for my sins of leveling a minstrel, I may have to in Lotro. 10 plus years ago, we used an add-on called Grid. Some folks recommended Mini Raid, but they said it can't show the heal over time buffer like Grid would have done. Is there a way to do that? Happy to code it myself if I have to. Exo says, I've gone with a very lazy open it in a different browser because Chrome kind of sucks sometimes. Seems to be okay. Okay. Exo says, Lotro doesn't have a heal prediction plugin. So, the first place my mind goes is, yes, I love Mini Raid. I use it quite a lot. For those who haven't seen it, we'll just go ahead and add it in right here. Refresh. And then, I saw a really fun thing on Prime where Prime has a bunch of reload stuff, but they stuck a tilde at the front of the name for tilde Mini Raid reload, for instance, and then they all sort at the bottom out of the way. I really like that. So, Mini Raid, let's load that in. And where did it go? All right, so let's pull that up and enable this menu. Cool. And get this window out of the way. Awesome. All right, so the first thing that I think of when I think of Mini Raid, or healing like you're talking of, is how do you know how much healing is going to happen? And I don't know how much information you have about a skill from the API. So for instance, if I have a heal over time, and this is good for 45 to 6,500 morale every 3 seconds, that's what's on the tooltip. I assume that includes any outgoing healing modifications, but it doesn't include if I crit on the application of that, or if those heals then crit themselves. Exo says you can't pull heal potency out of the effect on a player, so you're going to need to figure out another way of determining how much healing is left. So one thing you could do is try to guess based on outgoing messages like Soliloquy of Spirit. Well, we can even see that. I'll go ahead and put combat player back on. So we can see, scrolling down here, that it applied a heal, restoring that much. So seeing those two messages together, I applied it and then it healed for this much. I could try to guess that over the next 45 seconds, we're going to see this much healing. But we can see there's variable amounts for each one, of course. And that doesn't take into account critical effects. And if you have more than one going, they're each going to do that. So we can have 2 heal over times, 3 heal over times. And of course, if you have multiple healers healing the same target, they can have 6 or 9 of these on them. Exo has added, you can use chat parsing to pull out how much one tick heals for and extrapolate from that. Exactly. But you need to store tick rates of individual heals over time for that to work. So, your frames. It's a lot of combat parsing is the problem. There's no Lua interface to give you that information without going and doing text parsing. And so, yeah, I don't know what it is with my dropped frames, but they are definitely dropping. Shrink that even more. I wonder if I have some sort of network issue. Is there a way in OBS to be like, fix your network? It's so weird because, and maybe it was just switching to the chat channel, I don't know. But OBS definitely says I'm dropping frames, and yet I'm streaming at like 4 megabytes a second. This is nothing. And my CPU is at 10%. So yes, as Exo and I are both saying, the lack of a combat interface for the Lua API means that this is not a easy thing to do. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You could have a plugin guess, and you could try to refine that guess over time. And you could even have a plugin, especially for capped players, where you just said, hey, what is your outgoing healing? What is your whatever number? Plug that in here, and we'll use that to calculate. And so for cap level characters, you could have it specifically, if you're level 140, punch in these 3 numbers, and we'll see what we can do. But I think without getting that information from the player, that's going to be a hard one. But good question. Thanks so much for asking that. There are definitely differences between the Lotro API and other games like World of Warcraft. And some of that stems from being a smaller team, they have less time to devote to it, and an overabundance of caution. You can really see where the API does things where they think that they can let you do it without opening up the game to malicious style plugins or security vulnerabilities or whatever. Chromate says, you're at 5,500 kilobits per second. Yes, I'm seeing similar numbers, which should have no problem for my internet provider. That is so weird. But I feel like dropping frames, is that a me thing or is that a network thing? I think there's a settings. Output. Yeah, video bitrate. It seems fine. Oh. But my apologies. Normally that doesn't happen to me. Okay. Exo says, difference between Lotro API and WoW API is understating it. Yeah, there are differences. That's all I can say about that. Okay, so we have the ability to enable and disable chat monitoring completely based on the setting in Minstrel Buff. Whoa! For some reason, my question marks have caused problems. So let's go ahead and go back on down to line 192 and fix that. So 192, nope, and nope. We still need to do something about that, but I do want to load this plugin. Okay, so in the options, if you turn off Use Soliloquy Tracker, we disable things completely. Yeah, as mentioned, the other person in my house is also running 4 Lotro clients, so I have a random Hobbit targets down here. So it's hard to extrapolate from that experience. Okay, that being said, I'm not using my graphics too much right now. Let's just bring them on down. Okay, so what we want is, if the chat is enabled, if the plugin is enabled, to go ahead and conscientiously turn off combat monitoring. So we need a second setting. We have used, and then we also need self.is in, what do we call this? Is in watcher of resolve stance. Not stance. What do we call these things? Trait? Spec. I'll just call it is in watch resolve. And that is going to be equal to something. Now, we have the code over here that we can borrow from the utils saying, oh, we can go through the skill list and look for Soliloquy of Spirit. Sweet. Let's borrow that function. Function, Soliloquy of window is, in fact, we can have the function that looks just like that. Is in watcher of resolve. That's going to return true or false, and we're going to do the same thing. So we do need to get the skill list, and we can see an example of that in here. Oh, we can't, but that's okay. We have a local player, and in the local player, we're going to go ahead and local player method, and get trained skills. That's going to return a skill list. Cool. So local skill list equals local player get trained skills. And then we can go ahead and iterate through that. For I equals 1 to skill list get count. And we can verify that that is correct with the members of the skill list. Sometimes they aren't consistent with their naming. Sometimes it's get skill count or get item count, and sometimes it's just get count. But that's okay. Get skill count, and then we don't need to iterate by the 1. That's the default, so do and then end. Cool. And then we can do the same things. Local item equals skill list, get item at position I. Local name equals item get skill info get name, and we can convince ourselves that's correct. Get item returns a skill. Get skill has get skill info, and that has get skill info returns a skill info, which has get name. Excellent. Very deep in the hierarchy here. And then finally, we're looking for Soliloquy of Spirit. Now, do we already have a translation of that? You would think so. That's the whole point of this, but we do not. So, you know what? I'm going to create a separate section here. I'm going to call it class, maybe. And we're going to call, we're going to go ahead and move Watcher of Resolve down in here. And we're also going to have Soliloquy of Spirit equals, and I'm going to fix that up here. Excellent. Remember my semicolons, and then Soliloquy of Spirit. Now I do like making my table keys here like this, because it does mean that we can use the alternate indexing. Oh, and we should go down to chat and fix that up real fast. Okay, so Soliloquy of Spirit pattern is good, but Watcher of Resolve, there we go. So Watcher of Resolve is now in class. This dot notation, where we can lang dot class dot Watcher of Resolve, doesn't work so well if you have spaces and whatnot in your key. So if it's alphanumeric with underscores, you can do this, and it takes a few less characters to do it. Exo says, it's a global variable in main. I got lazy and used it in a few places. Not a problem. There's a local player global variable already in this plugin, for instance. That's how I was able to get a hold of that. It's not a problem. The more you use something, the more tempting it is to have a global variable. The only problem with that is substituting your own test stuff if you have test functionality. But that gets harder and harder when you start getting closer, like an effects list. Effects list that you want to then be able to pass on back to Lotro and say, here's an effects that I want to put into a UI element, and then it all just falls apart. So, yeah. All right, is in Watcher Resolve. Okay, so we have a thing that we can go ahead and compare with, Soliloquy of Spirit in class. So, if name equals get string, and that's lang.class.Soliloquy of Spirit, then return true. And we're going to iterate through all those and then return false. So we know right away if we are in Watcher of Resolve by seeing when we start up. Well, that's exciting. Sorry, I had a keyboard shortcut that started doing virtual desktops, and I did not want that. All right, so is in Watcher Resolve, we're going to set to is in the result of that function, which is going to check Soliloquy of Spirit. Ooh, that's exciting. Maybe OBS has finally settled down. Okay. That's fun. Exo says, the top secret version of Auras is a bit better about this kind of thing. Neat. I mean, all we can do is look at our past attempts and try and do a little bit better the next time, right? That being said, I don't know if there's a performance problem for Lua to pass parameters all over the place versus just having a global parameter that these things look at. Like, I don't know what if any overhead that does. Like in a regular programming language, in a compiled programming language like C++, C#, C, whatever, I normally think that there's going to be compiled down to bytecode. There's going to be registers containing addresses of parameters being passed. And so you get a certain number of those for free, and beyond that, it spills over to the stack. And so if you're only passing one or two things around, it feels pretty free, right? Like it's a single operation to copy that address over into that register. That's fine. That's fast. I just don't know if that intuitive sense of it's okay to pass a couple of parameters, but don't go crazy in a compiled programming language even translates over to Lua. And so I start going off into tangents right there. Exo says, it's more about trying to keep things tidy and produce less. Well, where on earth is that thing in the code? Absolutely. There's a concept called locality of code, where if everything you need to understand this block of code is visible on the page right now, it gets a lot easier to maintain the code and to change the code. If you have to look in 4 different files in 7 different locations to understand this block of code, it's going to be that much harder to maintain, to change. You're going to probably break something every time you do it. So locality of code can make a big difference. Cool. Yeah. Speaking of tangents. Okay. So we have an initial value. When we start up, do we have the thing? And now we have a way to say we care about the results of this chat. Okay. So self that equals true. Otherwise, self dot that equals false. We did a classic pattern of the true branch sets something to true, the false branch sets something to false. We don't need that in our life. We can just say is in Lotro resolve equals this. Now, that's long enough that it deserves its own new line, but we don't need a whole if-else branch for it, right? We can just say, we're done with that. In Lotro resolve is equal to whether the new specialization is Lotro of resolve. Bam, done. Exo says, just don't look too closely at my UI code. Yeah, I hear you. I have similar problems. Okay, so we have, we've checked for specialization changed. Now we need to use it. So if self is not in Lotro resolve, we want to not be checking for combat. That's easy enough. If what is it? If not, self is in Lotro resolve. Oh no, we do want. If self is in Lotro resolve, then end. Okay, so that's really promising if this even compiles. We will not be checking the chat. And we can go ahead and do quick little turbine dot. Let's go ahead and turbine dot shell dot writeline. And go ahead and spit out found a soliloquy when we do find it. And that'll let us monitor whether this is happening at all. Actually, that's funny because we can't trigger that. Okay, and we can't trigger that if we don't have it. Okay, so yeah. Checking for soliloquy. ... Okay, so we're going to give that a try. We're going to come back into the game. We're going to go ahead and bring back our plugin manager and bring back our standard channel in case there's errors. Unload, reload, errors, of course. Let's go check that out. First of all, line 33. Yep, I forgot to put a semicolon at the end of my table definition. That catches me so often. But that seems to be the only compile time syntax error. So let's go ahead and check this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and change the filters to include standard. Okay, checking for soliloquy. We can see that. Checking for soliloquy. We can see that. Let's go ahead and switch. Great. Oh, that's great. We can see we're no longer checking for soliloquy. And in fact, I can't use it anymore, but I can use other things. Exo says, if your brain ever tells you, this would be cool if it had drag drop functionality, you need to tell your brain to sit and time out for a bit. I don't have a good intuitive sense of how dragging and dropping into quick slots works in Lotro at all. I haven't done that yet. I've seen it in some other stuff, and I've tried playing around, modifying things a little bit, but it's all a foreign language to me so far. Okay, so we can see we're no longer checking combat, but do I even have any heal over times? Probably not. But if we go ahead and switch on back, we should see, after all of this comes in, that we are hopefully once again checking. Let's find out. Well, I don't see it. Okay, so it is not fully working yet, although the turning off part was great. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close out the auras files. We've stripped them for all we needed. Let's go ahead and find out what's going on with this is in Watcher of Resolve. Okay, let's go ahead and get some debug output just to know what's going on. So shell.writeLine, we are in Watcher of Resolve, and one that says we are not in Watcher of Resolve. Also, this is a point where I'm regretting not having a debug capability yet, because you do have to wait like, I don't know, 30 seconds or something to change these. Also, where else? Okay, is in Watcher Resolve. So we need self dot is in Watcher Resolve. Awesome. Okay, so turbine.shell.writeLine found specialization change, and I want to see that. So I want to see the args.message, and then and then if self is in Watcher, we're actually going to put this pattern back in for a sec. Then turbine.shell.writeLine. We are in Watcher of Resolve. Cool. And then we can do an else, the opposite, and then an end. Okay, that gives us a little bit more insight. We are not. A little insight into what's going on under the covers. So I'm going to go ahead and load this up. It says we are in Watcher of Resolve. Great. And let's go ahead and switch over, unload, and reload. We are not in Watcher of Resolve. So we can see that the code we have scraped from auras is working perfectly. It can tell that we are either in or not when we're starting up. Great. And we can see we're not spitting out messages talking about combat. Awesome. So I need to switch back. And again, this is that problem where if I had a debug functionality, that might save me a little bit of effort, because what is this, like 15 seconds, 30 seconds? I don't know. It feels a lot longer when I'm waiting for it. All right. Found specialization change. You have acquired the class, the Watcher of Resolve, but it says we are not in the Watcher of Resolve. Okay, there we go. So let's go ahead and figure out what's wrong with that. So one of the things I like doing when I'm looking at Lua pattern matching is the Lua Patterns Viewer, which helps me figure out where I've made a stupid mistake in my pattern. Awesome. So let's take a look at this. Capture group makes a cool. You've acquired the class specialization. What I would like to do is, can I match this against something? Well, everything looks fine. Matching any character may fill your pattern. They match the longest sequence, meaning that anything after this pattern won't be matched. Awesome. It is doing a greedy gobbling of the pattern. That was something I called out as a possible thing, and I think we're seeing confirmation of that. So let's go ahead and back that out, and instead it's going to have to go Watcher Resolve period. And we're going to go ahead and switch back over so we can start that timer, and we'll go ahead and unload and reload. Lovely. The auras code working great again. While we wait for that, Exo says, in quick thoughts, it's easier. I did drag and drop on my controls. Clicking on a control seems to block other mouse events from being fired until you release. That's interesting. Now, I know clicking on a control doesn't stop mouse moving or dragging style events, but on a regular control, because that's how you implement window dragging if you're doing that from scratch. but I haven't done anything that complicated, I don't think. Okay, so we can see if we change back in, let's just go to the standard chat. Oh, standard has advancement too. No, that's a terrible idea. All right. Found specialization change. You've acquired the class specialization. Still, we are not in Watcher of Resolve. All right, what am I doing wrong? We are not in. If self dot is in Watcher of Resolve, that equals the new specialization equals lang.class.watcher of resolve. You know, I should have put this in here so I could tell what was going on. The actual specialization that we found, that text is super important. Let's go ahead and unload and reload and go ahead and see what that text looks like. Wow. That was more than a 3-second pause. Okay, found specialization change. You know, I forgot to actually put this in quotes. Which is less helpful. Mouse enter / mouse leave, so it says exo, won't fire if you're clicking / dragging a different control. Oh, so only the control that you're dragging is getting them. But it does fire when you release. So I'm doing a little control that monitors the endpoints of stuff. Interesting. So only one control at a time is receiving that, and because the thing that you're dragging is receiving them, the other controls can't. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I feel like in a full windowing system like in Windows, that wouldn't be the case. But yeah, okay. I see that. Okay, I am worried that there's some extra stuff going on here. And so I'm going to go ahead and, I lost track of things. I'm going to just reload the minstrel buffs and then switch on over. All right, so what are we seeing? You've acquired that. Oh, okay. We're just getting one back. Why are we only getting one? Okay, so the pattern is specialization changed. Yes. I'm doing something wrong because doing pattern matching is normally, or capturing is fine. Like we're doing it right there. Okay. Yes, specialization. Okay, so how do we capture that? We have the string dot match. All right, everything was fine except string dot find is just like, yes, I got it. String dot match will actually return those captures. Okay, I feel better. 3 seconds isn't necessarily long enough sometimes. Well, actually, I think it was long enough from when the standard chat went out to says, I saw this message. Maybe, but it could have been buffering a bunch of chat messages. So, yeah. Actually, one thing you could do if you want to be really complicated is remember what your old one is. By definition, you can't change. You can change to the same one because you could have 2 blue lines spec'd and they're just spec'd differently. Oh, that's... Well, if you see the message, yeah, how would you know it's stabilized in that edge case where someone's changing from blue to different blue? Like you could definitely know it's stabilized if you know you were in blue and it's like, okay, I don't see red, I don't see red. Oh, I see red, or I see a not blue. So as long as they're not switching to the same one, you could just keep. Oh, 3 seconds wasn't long enough. Check again. Check again. Okay, I see a change. But it doesn't cover that edge case of switching from Watcher Resolve to different Watcher Resolve. I don't know that anyone would actually do that in actual end game play, but you know. Actually, you could just quit after 10 seconds. You could be like, I give up. I'm going to stop pulling. This new one is, wherever you're at now is where I think you are. That would work. That would catch that edge case. Okay, so we have fixed that. Let's go ahead and load in minstrel buff. Excellent. Thinks we are all set. Excellent. Let's go ahead and switch on over. Okay. Fascinating. There's an extra new line showing up in there. Of course there's an extra new line showing up in there. Really, we just care if this thing starts with. Okay. You know, I forget in Lua how to do a starts with, but I do remember that there's some helper functions in the turbine libraries. So if we come into string, there's a starts with, and we can just look, oh, hey, does it start with that? In fact, we're using, does this depend on that? I bet it doesn't. We'll probably just copy that out. But does minstrel buffs depend on anything? It does not. Okay, well, we're not going to add a dependency to the Lotro turbine files, but we are going to hoist this out. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. So local is match equals string dot subs. What does string dot sub do? I'm not convinced I understand what this is doing. Lua string dot sub. Ah, from the ith character to the, okay. Oh, that feels unnecessarily complicated. But this is only when we've found a specialization change, which you can only do like every 30 seconds or something. Okay, so we have the args.message. No. The new specialization, it just has a new line at the end. Can I encode a new line here and just make it work? That'd be neat. Let's go ahead and try that. Oh, you know, I forgot to switch back here. That's sad. Okay, so we saw a warrior scald period new line. Exo says, swapping line removes your current line first, then switch to the new one, even if both lines are the same. Yeah, I can see that. But if you're switching from blue to blue, you're going to get the message that you're entering blue line. And so as long as we believe that, yeah, okay, then whatever you're entering is the one you're entering. And once you get that message, the question I really had was, how do you know that you've settled down? And if you're, if 3 seconds has gone by and you're still in that quasi phase, and you look at your effects list or whatever, that might not give you a definitive answer. But yeah, that's hard. Okay, but we're going to go ahead and make sure we're fresh. We're going to go ahead and switch on over. Hey, why are we checking for Soliloquy a bunch? Oh, because a bunch of things happened. Okay, we are in Watch Over Resolve. Great, so just adding that new line in there was fine. There's probably a way to fix that pattern to not hit that new line, but the dot star at the very end is a bit of a challenge because it is a greedy pattern matching. It's going to take as much as it can. Okay, so we can see at least that that part is working. And we can come on down here to our chat received and get rid of this right line there. Excellent. Oh, well, that's happening. We're going to switch on back. So I'm guessing that was all. Oh, nope. A few more. Excellent. Okay, so we should now know if we are in the correct stance. Actually, I removed this one down here, but I think I still want that. Turbine dot shell dot right line. You know what? Let's just put it back with the undo. There we go. Okay. So we start off not in Watch or Resolve. Excellent. We're going to come on over. And just the checking for soliloquy tells us that we are. Oh, yes, that's checking all chat. We haven't excluded player combat. Okay, that's fine. So if I go ahead and activate, yes, we got ourselves a Soliloquy of Spirit, and we can see it is working on others. Yes, it is. Perfect. And we can see that checking for soliloquy is coming in on every message. Perfect. Now, if I go ahead and just refresh that one, and then pop into Warrior Scald, we can see that the combat messages still come in, but we've stopped checking them. Perfect. So if we forget to turn off the Soliloquy of Spirit tracker completely, we can at least respect this and say, nope, we're not going to bother. That's parsing chat messages is too much. Okay, fantastic. And then what I would love is if I could pop back in there before the Soliloquy of Spirit ends. Nope, there we go. Okay, we actually think we have a second left for it. That's beautiful. Okay, awesome. I'm very pleased with that. I think that's going to be great because I will always forget to declick that box. And I would really like to not do intrusive chat monitoring if I don't have to. Okay, so that was a lot of changes. I just undid some stuff there. So let's go back in and see what's different. All right, we have an is watcher and resolve. Great. Looks like we still have some turbine.shell. Shell. Okay, we'll remove those. Okay, that's all that would need to be removed. All right, we have the initial checking stage and the function to do it. Excellent. Oh, we have that return there. We don't need that anymore. That's 197. All right. And then we are splitting out the chat received into 2 bits, one of which will always happen for the change in specialization, and the one that only happens if we're in Watcher of Resolve. Beautiful. All right, anything else? Oh, yes, we have some strings changes. Don't need that, but we do need these. Awesome, and we can go ahead and update our README. Fantastic. None! No to-do items left. But we can go ahead and... Cool. We can go ahead and only monitor combat chat if in Watcher of Resolve. Bam. Thank you very much, Exo, for your expertise. Oh, some chat. All right. Gandalf says, how long have you been playing for? Well, today, about 2 hours on stream. But more generally, I first played Lord of the Rings Online back in 2007, 2008, right after it was released. I feel like there's someone next to me. I'm hearing noises. I guess not. Okay, so I first played back then. I didn't stick with it for very long, maybe 6 months. I enjoyed it, but at the time it was more group focused, and I didn't have a steady grouping party to spend time with, and I wasn't in an active kinship or anything. But then around 3 years ago, I got back into it, and just in time to be involved in the game and in the community, and then a global pandemic broke out. So it was a very convenient time to have this focus. So maybe that answers your question. And Exa says, I'm very aware I must do lots of chat monitoring. I'm just going to give it and embrace it. Absolutely. If you have to do it, do it. The reality is, on a modern computer, the amount of string processing you do for each message isn't that much, right? A good string checking utility will bail out as soon as possible. And if you're saying, is this in there, it will do more complicated things than just checking character by character. There are better algorithms out there. And so, if you have to monitor chat, monitor chat. If you can get away with turning off chat monitoring, though, that's just better for those times when you don't need it on. Oh, Gandalf says, do you roleplay a lot? In game, mostly I just roleplay as a hobbit running around bashing things with a frying pan, which isn't very much in the way of roleplaying. But I know there's a lot of role-playing activities, especially on the Lorland server, with various kinships. The one that comes to mind is the Grand Matham Society, but various kinships getting together and doing hobbity things or whatever. And so I know there are people out there who spend more time emoting from the perspective of their character. But mostly I spend my extra time doing plugins. Oh, Chromite says there's an Ember's Most Figments change announcement that they are not pleased with. That's interesting. Oh, I stopped dropping frames for a while there, and now I'm back to it. That's sad. All right, we have two links to the forums. Well, I'm curious. What's going on in the wider world of not plugins? All right, changes in Update 32 and beyond to Embers, Motes, and Figments. Which I have to be honest, I don't play enough endgame to really have straight in my head what the difference of those are. Okay. We want to clarify the value of each currency, better control the distribution, improve overall player experience when it comes to acquiring and spending these currencies. Here's the short version. We're significantly increasing the cap on these currencies. For example, Embers of Enchantment will cap at 100,000. I'll tell you what, I'm curious about Embers of Enchantment. What is the current cap? Current cap is 10,000. Okay. Can I increase the size of this? All right. Oh, 10 times higher than it is now. Okay. There will be no currency barter exchange between them, so you can't convert to Figments of Splendor. Okay. When we increase the level cap, all of your existing embers will become motes. Okay. The source of embers will continue to change as our newest content changes. The only gear that disenchants into them will come from adventurers' loot boxes. Yes, different links to the same stuff. Awesome. So yeah, the reality is I don't have enough insight into why this would be good or bad or how this would impact me as a player. The only thing I really know is that I get Figments of Splendor from completing festival quests, and when I get too close to 10,000, I have to go spend them on something, and then I rinse and repeat. As you can see, I'm level 139 here on Evernight, and I went from 130 to 139 just from the Yule Festival. I didn't actually do any missions, I guess. Mission for a good cause for the Yule. So let's see. Of enhance. Wait. So members of enchantment. So I have some embers and some motes of enchantment. I couldn't tell you where I got them from or what I would do with them. But Chromite seems to feel like this is not a good change. Chromite, I assume you have more endgame experience than I do. So I will have to not comment on that. But that's the link. Anyone who's in chat can see that there. Otherwise, go check out in the announcements section of the forum. Okay, and then there's a breakdown of what's going on there. Okay. Well, cool. Thanks for letting me know. Oh, bye-bye, Gandalf. Thanks for letting me know that that's happening. I know several people in our kinship on Treebeard also play endgame on other servers, and that will, I'm sure, be of a topic of interest. All right, so we have made some great progress. There's nothing to do on the to-do list. I am out of time tonight, so I'm not going to go ahead and do the uploading process to Lotro interface tonight. But I might do that first thing next time, or I might just do that in between and go on to something completely new next time. So we'll see. But in the meantime, this is very exciting. This is everything I wanted to do. I don't actually have any more to-do items. I'm just going to close that. I don't have any more to-do items on the Soliloquy of Spirit tracker. I think it's doing what I wanted it to do, which is to give me a better heads-up awareness of who has Soliloquy of Spirit and who has Inner Strength, and gives me that color flashing notification if I want to make sure to keep them up to date. I can just clear them all out with the X buttons if I don't care anymore. And that's really where I think I'm going to leave it and play with it a little bit, release it to the world. Maybe a few other people will play with it, and that'll give us a sense of what's missing. Because right now I just can't think of anything. Everything on my to-do list is done, which is a nice feeling. It won't last, but it's a nice feeling. So that's cool. Neat. Okay, well, with that being said, I think throw any last-minute comments or questions into chat, and we'll go ahead and start wrapping on up. Okay, so Chromite says, they are specifying the only way you can get embers from disenchanting gear is disenchanting loot box gear, not gear you get from an endgame, I assume, instance. That's not good, says Chromite. So the only source of embers will be wrappers for weeklies and opening loot boxes. Oh, right. I did see that in Treebeard. We had 2 different mission wrappers at the 15 and the 45, which was surprising to me. I hadn't seen that before. And it was because some of them were giving embers and some of them were giving motes. And then we asked around, I was like, oh, there's a you're running at level cap version that gives you the embers. And that was a bit of a clicking. I remember that. The Redhead says, I have 2,500 embers. I have no idea where I got them from. And there's no longer a way to convert motes numbers into figments, which you're not a fan of. Okay. I haven't spent a lot of time figuring out how to spend those things beyond getting cosmetic pets. So I'll defer to your thoughts on whether or not it's good or bad to be able to convert them back and forth. I've never had a steady enough supply of them to really have a concern about that, I think. Okay, and Avery says, that's a super insight, thank you. If you ever feel Lua's bothersome, just spend 5 minutes with BrightScript. You know, it's funny, I like Lua. Sometimes I wish there were specific changes to the Lotro Lua API, but that's not a Lua thing, right? Like, that Lua is fine. The one thing I really wish Lua had was the equivalent to a VBScript strict mode, where on loading, it says, hey, you just referred to a variable, you're trying to access it, but you never declared this variable. That's an error now. I would really like that because it just silently converts to nil, which your code doesn't always choke on, right? And it just leads to some undefined behavior, or at least not correct behavior. So I would really like a strict mode for Lua. And as far as I can tell, you need third-party libraries and that kind of thing that's not built into Lotro. If I have that wrong, if Lotro has that capability, someone shout that out because I would love that. But yeah, Lua's fine. Sometimes I wish the API was a little bit more extensive than it is, but we can already do some awesome stuff with it. All right. Well, thank you all for bearing with me as we finalize Soliloquy of Spirit over, what was this, the 9th week of working on this plugin. Really pleased with the progress we've made on it. Yep. Exo says, yeah, Lua good, Lotro API less good. Give me better IDs of stuff. You know, I ran into that same problem. This is an aside, but I was playing around with the Prime Loot, the Prime Bags plugin, and I was noticing that you can get the ID of an item if you drag it into a quick slot, but you can't get the item ID if it's in your backpack. And I wish you could, because if you knew the ID of an item, then a plugin could solve the sort of I can't identify my carry-alls in my inventory problem. Because Prime Bags lets you declare buckets, and you can just say, this thing goes in this bucket. And you can just say that, you could have a custom set of code for carry-alls, which instead of a bucket gives labels for these carry-alls. And all it would take is the item instance ID of these carry-alls, and I can't get it unless you drag it onto a quick slot. It's just so sad. It's like, no, just give me this one extra piece of information. But change is slow. Oh, Chromite says, you can't convert back and forth. It's one way. Only embers downgrading to figments and motes. Oh, sorry. Embers downgrading to figments or to motes. And then motes downgrading to figments. Just allows you to get figments for those nice pets / cosmetics that pop up on the figments vendors without opening loot boxes. Okay. So currently, embers is endgame stuff. Motes is less rare, and you can downgrade from embers to motes, and then from motes to figments. Okay. Well, I am familiar with using figments. The rest of it, I couldn't tell you where to go for the barter vendors. And Exo says, the fact that I can't pull an effect ID, skill ID, item ID, and have to use names / icons or whatever frustrates me. Yeah, I hear you. I don't know how much of that was an intentional restriction of what you have access to in a Lotro API, and how much of it was just they'll never need that. That just, turns out, no, we could use that. Awesome. Oh man, I am enjoying this conversation, Chromite and Exo, but I'm gonna have to put a pause on it because I have not had a full dinner yet, and it's getting late. So thank you so much for your activity in chat. I appreciate that I'm just not shouting into the void, or if I am, that you are also in the void. I appreciate that. It's great having you here. So that's all we're going to cover today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me on this exploration of Lord of the Rings Online's plugins. I do hope to see you next week. And until then, keep plugging along. All right, bye-bye now.